Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's Mae Cannon from Churches for Middle East Peace, and you have joined our second part of our webinars series that is launching this Lent. This series is called JerUSAlem, the Holy City in Crisis, and we're talking about some of the realities happening on the ground. And today is the first day of Lent. It's Ash Wednesday. Many of you have been traveling to churches and parishes around the country and the world to acknowledge the beginning of Lent. And the cross on my forehead represents what we're practicing today, the reminder from ashes we have come and to ashes we will return. The Lenten season focuses quite significantly on the depravity of the human condition and on the brokenness in the world. And so we thought it was appropriate, as we're working on peace in the Middle East, and as we're turning our eyes on Jerusalem, to talk about some of the realities that are happening there. So thank you for joining us. We're glad you're with us. And we have a very special guest today who's going to talk to us about some of the realities on the ground in Jerusalem. His name is Moien Odeh. So welcome, Moien.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to be here.
Pleased that you are with us. I want to introduce him a bit with his bio, and then we'll have him tell us about himself. We were introduced to Moien's work through the US consulate, actually, through some relationships that we have on the ground. And they talked to us about his incredible work as an attorney who has a background that's quite broad. So I want to tell you, he's the founder and managing partner of Odeh Advocates, mainly working on human rights cases. In addition, he's volunteering as a legal manager for Northern East Jerusalem Residence Committee's legal clinic to represent individual and public interests on human rights. He's volunteering as IHL coordinator. What's IHL?
It's International Humanitarian Law.
Yes, so International Humanitarian Law Coordinator in Association for the Promotion of International Humanitarian Law. And he's also a member of the Young Legal Leaders Group of the International Bar Association that addresses issues related to the Israeli Palestinian conflict. Finally, he's a policy member and author with Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network. He was recently identified by the US State Department as a young leader and participated in the prestigious Leaders for Democracy Fellowship on the theme of conflict resolution. He did his fellowship with the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. His specialty is conflict resolution, rule of law, and human rights. Well, that's quite a resume. We're pleased to learn from your wisdom and have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, so Moien, help us. We have just been introduced. I know you've spent some time with our staff on the ground with Churches for Middle East Peace. Tell us about your work. I mean, I just read this incredible resume and all these connections, and I kept reading human rights, human rights, human rights. What does your work focus on? Tell us what you do.
Well, thank you so much. I will give you before I started becoming a human rights lawyer, I used for 2 years as a taxation lawyer. And at that time, I discovered that, well, this is not the right place. I should be there. You are making rich people more rich. This is what I was doing. So I decided, okay, I should pay back for the community. And I moved back to Jerusalem because at that time I used to work in Tel Aviv. And I started volunteering actually for one human rights center. And from there, it started the journey. Nowadays, what we are focusing on is mainly the East Jerusalem neighborhoods behind the barrier. To those who don't know, in 2002, the Israeli government, Sharon's government at that time, decided to build a barrier. They called it a security barrier, different names, but they built the barrier. The big problem with this barrier was that it's not going through the green line. So it was not going through the border of 67. It was cutting lands and cutting people from their lands. What happened in Jerusalem actually was that the Israeli government decided to build the wall, the barrier, inside Jerusalem itself, which is cutting Jerusalemite people from their city, from city center, from their life. So this is what we are. These are the areas where we are focusing now. So I am personally, I'm living now, I'm talking to you where I'm sitting in Kufr Aqab. It's called Kufr Aqab area. It's exactly on the north of Jerusalem. It's connected to like the distance between the area here and Ramallah is about 7 kilometers, which is about 3.5 miles, maybe 3 miles also. This area, because what happened in 2002, and because that there's a huge housing problem in Jerusalem itself, in East Jerusalem, I mean, especially housing problem, and there's a shortage of about 20,000 housing units for East Jerusalemite. After building the barrier, the authorities neglected totally the area. This issue allowed some contractors, which is about like 6 to 7, this is what we know, to build huge buildings without any inspections. And these buildings allowed people like me and other young couples to own a house, because to have an apartment in Jerusalem, you need about $500,000. You could imagine $500,000 to have an apartment, a small apartment in Jerusalem. How many people in their early life have this amount of money? So this area offered us two issues. I mean, the first one was allowing us to have a house with much more less money, like where the house apartment. When I mean house, it's apartment, just to make it. It's not the house with as Americans could, like with a garden or no. It's an apartment. Apartment far away from the city center again. Apartment will cost about $150,000. So these are the prices here. So from one side you can have a house, from the other side you can keep your residency right. Israel in 1967, when they annexed East Jerusalem, they called that the area our Israeli land. But the Palestinian people who used to live there at that time, and there was about between 60 and 65,000 people, Palestinian people living in East Jerusalem at that time, they got only a residency right, which allowing them to work, to move, but does not allow them to vote. They are not considered as Israeli citizens. This right is not transferred to the children until you should prove all the time that your life center is inside Jerusalem and inside Israel. The people in East Jerusalem are always following, like they are in a race behind the documents. They need always to prove that their city like the center of their life is Jerusalem.
Yes, this is actually very important, and people watching, some of them are very, very well familiar with the different, areas A, B, and C in the West Bank, and
Wonderful.
The status of East Jerusalem being occupied. Others watching will not be familiar with that. So just to back up a minute, you began by saying your human rights work focuses on Jerusalemites. And so
right.
What I hear you saying in that regard is specifically the population center that's Palestinians living in Jerusalem, who are called Jerusalemites. That would be your main focus, right?
Right, it is.
Then,
actually, these are them.
Yes, and we talked actually about that population quite significantly yesterday in our conversation with Danny Seidemann, because one of the things he was talking about, we had a conversation about the December announcement by President Trump, and the whole discussion of, the U.S. administration acknowledging Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and saying this is just a reality, that we also need to talk about the reality of the residents of the city who are Palestinian, which is also a part of the reality. So in that regard, you had just given us a number. You said 60 to 65,000 people.
That was what this number was, the number of the Arab Palestinians in East Jerusalem. That was in 67, this number.
Oh.
Now East Jerusalemite people are about 340,000 people. They are third or almost more. They are 37% of all of Jerusalem.
Yes.
From this 340,000 people, about third of them, about 140,000 people are living in the neighborhoods behind the wall, behind the barrier, which is one of them is Kufr Aqab. In Kufr Aqab now, according to estimations, we have almost 65,000 people living here, between 65 and 70,000 people living here. From the other side, to show the neglection, to show that the one Jerusalem is not really there. These 65,000 people receiving less than 1% of Jerusalem budget. To the situation here, especially about in services, infrastructure, trash, it's like it's not only a third world state like the situation. No, it's much more than this. My main focus now, I'm working on classes to challenge the authorities, the Israeli authorities, mainly the municipality, to improve their services in these neighborhoods. We believe that the people of East Jerusalem, away from the political question, like until there will be a political solution, and until this will happen, these people deserve to live in dignity, in a good life, like to have at least some kind of services for their good life conditions. You cannot continue living in this situation. I just ask people just to go online and to write Kufr Aqab and to read some articles about the situation in this area. So yes. I will tell you about 3 cases that we worked recently about. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I just want to clarify some things before you go on, because I think that this is so critically important. So thank you for allowing me to interrupt. So when we look at Jerusalem, all of Jerusalem, there's the municipality which has been declared by Israel, and this is what you were talking about, where the land has been annexed, but the people have not. So we're talking about the population of Jerusalemites, Palestinians, who have Jerusalem IDs. They can vote, my understanding, in local municipal elections, but they're really stateless. They're not a part of the state of Israel. They're not a part of the Palestinian Authority, right?
Right. And not only this, Mae, if you allow me.
Please.
It's enough they got one of them or a family of them moved to the US, for example, and got a green card, so they will lose this residency right. They will come back to Jerusalem only as tourists. They will get a visa for 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, and maybe did not get a visa, and the authorities will tell them, oh, you know, we don't want you here because you are a tourist. This is one of the stories or issues that's happening here.
So Jerusalemites are always under threat of losing their very identity, and this is what you were talking to us about in terms of the need to prove the center of life being in Jerusalem. And so there's a constant burden of proof in that regard, and you're going to tell us some stories in a minute. But before we get to that, you mentioned the Palestinians behind the wall. So you talked about the separation barrier. The Israelis call it the security barrier. Often Palestinians call it the apartheid wall. This barrier that was built in 2002 is continuing to be built and is still not yet completely finished. You mentioned some numbers. You talked about the Palestinian Jerusalemites who are behind the wall. How many Palestinians have Jerusalem IDs that are on the West Bank side of the wall?
Well, this is discussable. Like nobody really has an official number, because we requested this different times from the authorities and they said we don't know. But what we are sure that the big percentage of the 140,000 people living in these neighborhoods, at least 90% of them are Jerusalemite people having Jerusalem ID, because and this was one of our arguments even in the court. There is no reason that somebody, a Palestinian with a Palestinian ID, will move to these neighborhoods where the prices are higher than the West Bank, but they got zero services. It's very crowded, and you have nothing to benefit from. Why you will yourself as a May, why you will go to live in a neighborhood that is more expensive than other neighborhoods, and you got zero services, and it's very crowded. It need you I will speak maybe in a few minutes about the checkpoint and how difficult it is for people to move through the checkpoint. But there's no reason, and it's not logic, that anybody from the West Bank will move to here unless it's a mixed family. And when I'm saying it's a mixed family, I mean somebody from the West Bank married to a woman from East Jerusalem. So they move to these areas because living in this area will give both. The Palestinian will live there without a need for a permit from one side, and the Palestinian lady or man will keep his or her residency right because she don't want, or they don't want to lose it, because it's their identity. If they lose it, they will be stateless totally. They're already stateless, but without it, they will have nothing, totally nothing at all.
And some of the benefits of having a Jerusalem ID is that you're able to travel back and forth without permits to and from the West Bank into Jerusalem.
Right. This is one of this kind of freedom movements for those who are having a Jerusalem ID. But I will tell you, for example, today, especially today, there's a checkpoint called Qalandia checkpoint, which is between Kufr Aqab and the other parts of East Jerusalem. The minimum time you need to move to pass the checkpoint is about 1 hour. You could imagine that I knew stories about families that they need to wake up at 5 in the morning and to bring their small children inside the car at 6:30 maximum. So they will be driving toward their schools. So they will be at school at 8. So if your child is waking up at 5 in the morning, reaching at 8, do you think he will still have any ability to learn something or to have? Besides, today it took me to pass the 500 meters, only the 500 meters. It took me 1.5 hours. Just to show how hard the situation is. This doesn't matter. You have the green, the blue card is the Jerusalem card. They call it the blue because it's colored blue. Doesn't matter. You have Jerusalem ID or you do not. You will suffer a lot inside these checkpoints in this area. I wanted just to say something about the wall. It's interesting to know that usually during different cases, court cases, I mean, and different discussions in 2002 and after that, the Israeli government always used security as an excuse to build the wall. But in East Jerusalem, in these areas, Kufr Aqab and Shafat refugee camp, which is located in the east of East Jerusalem, there was two reasons: security, which is they always said, and they said there is an Israel to keep the Israeli interest in Jerusalem. So at that time, it was not clear what they mean to keep the Israeli interest in Jerusalem by cutting Jerusalemite people and by cutting neighborhoods behind the barrier. It was not clear what is that. But day by day, and after that, they allowed hundreds of apartments to be built there. And after they pushed the people somehow, because you don't have a choice, you have to move to find a roof and a ceiling. So you will move to these areas. Day by day, the number of the residents of these neighborhoods, not only multiples. I think in 2002, the number of Kufr Aqab neighborhood was about 10,000 residents. Now, after 15 years, we are speaking about 70,000. 70 and 10. So this is to show you that they are pushing the East Jerusalem people to live there. if you are following, and for sure you are following all the news coming from Jerusalem, you will hear a lot about some plans, Israeli plans from the government and from authorities to cut these neighborhoods and to withdraw from these neighborhoods and to make them not part of Jerusalem. The
so
idea was
only a part of the Jerusalem municipality as declared by Israel. And that's part of what you were saying where, but they only have very limited access to benefits. So they pay Jerusalem taxes to the Jerusalem municipality and the state of Israel, but they receive nothing, almost 1% of the benefits. So there's not garbage pickup. I mean, these communities are living in quite desolation because of
even less. I will tell you, and these are official numbers. We can send them to anybody. It's a official letters that we got through one of our cases. In 2012, the total budget of Jerusalem for collecting trash was 320 million shekels, almost, which is about, let's say it's $100 million. I will not make but it's like 320 million shekels. The neighborhood of my neighborhood, Kufar Aqab, was getting 2 million shekels. 2 million and 300. It's not 1% even. It's not 1%. It's like if you don't need to be a mathematician to understand that 2 multiple 320 is less than 2%.
And the populations are the same? There's no difference in terms of numbers of people that are being serviced by that amount?
Sorry, excuse me?
Well, you were talking about the differentiation in services, 2 million shekels being invested in your community. I think you're speaking of Kufarata.
Right.
And 320 shekels in equivalent communities that are
in total, that was in total Jerusalem. Like this is the total budget of the municipality to Jerusalem to collect the trash. So this is the total budget, and from this 320 shekels, the municipality was giving only 2 million shekels to this neighborhood. Now, 5 years after this case, they used to say all the time that we cannot change it because there's a tender and we signed an agreement and we have financial problems. 5 years after that, now they are offering a new tender to collect the trash from all of the neighborhoods behind the barrier, which is 140,000 people, and they are offering 5.5 million shekels only, although that the total budget of Jerusalem municipality is 428 million shekels. Again, you have 16% of Jerusalem people living behind the wall. I'm not speaking about east or west. I'm speaking about as one. Let's see it as one. We have 16% of Jerusalem residents living behind the wall, but they receive maybe 1.5% sorry, of the budget for this area. This could show you what kind of life conditions these people are living in.
And the vast difference of treatment of peoples. I mean, one of the things we talk about with Jerusalem is a city for 3 faiths and 2 peoples. And so we were talking about the 200 to 300,000 Palestinian residents, and the fact that they have history and connections to the land doesn't in any way minimize Jewish connections to Jerusalem.
No, totally. Nobody is speaking now.
Right.
Like everybody has a connection in East Jerusalem. The problem is always to think that you are the only one who have a connection, and this is the big problem. While I recognize your connection to Jerusalem, but you should recognize mine too. This is what we.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to clarify one more thing in terms of numbers. So we were talking about how there's 200 to 300,000 Palestinianites Palestinians, Jerusalemites who have Jerusalem residency, and then you've been talking about 140,000. That's a part of that 2 to 300, right?
Yeah, but the total number is 340,000 in general. From this 340,000 of East Jerusalem, 140 living in the neighborhoods. Like it's 200,000 living inside. Right, 200,000 living inside the wall, and 140 living outside, which makes them together 340,000 plus minus. Like, this is the estimation.
Okay. Okay. We are, in just a few minutes, we do have some viewers, and we want to open it up for the opportunity for them to be able to ask some questions. And so while people are thinking about questions, why don't you tell us some of the stories and the examples that you wanted us to hear?
Well, I will tell you more about the case that we were following since 2015. In 2015, we decided to go to the court against the municipalities because of their neglections of the streets. There's no good streets. It's very bad streets. There's totally no sidewalks. There's no pedestrians passes. Like, it's kind of gambling for people to cross the road, just to understand how dangerous it is, because it's a very busy street. It's not only connecting this neighborhood to Jerusalem. No, it connects north of the West Bank to the south of the West Bank. For example, if you want to move from Ramallah to Bethlehem, you need to cross through this road. If you want to go to Jericho, you need to go through this road. If you need even to go to Nablus, which is also in the north, you need to go through this road. It's a very narrow road, and this is one of the reasons that it's very crowded. It's like, you cannot imagine how crowded it is, especially in the rush hours. According to some estimations, in 1 hour, about 15,000 vehicles passing only in 1 hour this street. And since it's a very narrow street, this could show you how difficult it's for the people to make their own life. Like, to do, like, it's enough for you to understand that if you have an appointment, or if you have a medical appointment or any issue, you will never know when you should leave your house. You will leave your house maybe 2 hours, 3 hours before, while it's only 20 minutes driving, but you don't have a choice. You need to go earlier, because otherwise, if there was a big traffic, you want to arrive on time. The other big problem is when there is an emergency situation, somebody with heart attack. In this area, we have some health clinics, but they are not well occupied. So the people should go to Jerusalem to get the treatment. And during this very problematic street, it's enough to understand that 15 to 20 minutes of postponing because of the traffic will mean a life for somebody. Total, like, when you have when somebody have a heart attack, 10 to 15 minutes is enough for him just to pass away. It's not you should not be a doctor to understand this. Besides that, there's other issues. But what I'm saying, that in this case, that we went to the court to show, and we showed the court that the Israeli municipality investing only 800,000 shekels in all of East Jerusalem neighborhoods behind the wall, again, which is 16%, while and this is an official number also, 800,000 shekels, while the total budget of the municipality for the infrastructure was 880 million shekels. Again, 800,000 shekels, and we have 880 million shekels for the whole of Jerusalem. Like, it's not 1%. 1% is a dream now. Even it's not like you are going beyond. It's 0.001 maybe. I don't know. But at that time, we got a very positive decision from the court, and this was because we got the support from the Ministry of Transportation, the Israeli Ministry of Transportation, that said what's happened before that the municipality requested the state of Israel to join the case, because they said, you as the government of Israel, the central government, you built the wall, so because of this wall we are unable to give our services to the people. And they said, we don't have money, because the government is not giving us enough money. What was very interesting in the state response at that case, that they said, well, you are lying. They were telling the municipality, you are totally lying. First of all, you have hundreds of millions of shekels waiting on the shelf for you to use in East Jerusalem, and you never ever try to use them. You said, you know, there's no need to use them. So this was the first one. The second one, they always use the security to say that we cannot go to these neighborhoods. They said it's very dangerous areas, while most of the, just for the to understand, many of the workers that were working in trash collection or infrastructure are living in these neighborhoods. So it's safe for them to live, but it's not safe for them to come and work. Like it's yeah, like you can live as a Palestinian, yeah, you can live and go to live in Kufr Aqab, but when you are working during the day as a municipality worker, so they cannot send you because it's dangerous for you to go there as on their behalf, which is also like not logical at all. So we got and we got a very good decision from the court telling them you should go and start working in these neighborhoods during, and they get the decision was even good, not because it said that you have the obligation to work. No, it was good because also they gave them a timeline. They said, okay, during this 3 months you should do so, after this 3 months you should do so. Until now, that the decision was in December, in November, sorry, 2015. Now we are in February 2018. It's 2.5 years, and nothing happened. They just keep postponed doing anything in the areas, using the same arguments that we don't have money and there's a security situation. While these arguments were rejected by the court, but they keep using it again and again. And one of the reasons they are keep using it again and again, that they were thinking that the law that the government was pushing to withdraw from these neighborhoods and to give them a special or a special local council for them, only for them, so they will not be part of Jerusalem. So tomorrow morning, if this happened, they will say, okay, unfortunately, we are willing to invest hundreds of millions of shekels in these neighborhoods, but unfortunately, they are not part under our responsibility anymore.
They would.
This was their plan.
The Jerusalem municipality.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't want us to get lost too much in the details, because sometimes
right.
they're a little hard to follow. But I think, I mean, of course, the devil is in the details.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry that I'm giving too much details.
No. I think your experience, I just want to be sure that I understand, and also those who are watching, that we understand kind of the big picture. So I want to back up again. You know, when I lived in Jerusalem, a bit in 2010 and 2011. I was in Beit Hanina, and okay. I can remember an example of the family that I was living with, you know, and I was there for kind of months at a time and then left and that type of thing. I was doing some consulting work on churches in the Near East. And my family that was hosting me, I was going out for a run, and they told me, you know, the neighborhood, I was in Beit Hanina, which is technically North Jerusalem, but it's on, my understanding is it's on the Palestinian side of the Green Line.
Right.
Other side is Pisgat Ze'ev, which is an Israeli community that's an East Jerusalem settlement. And I can remember the family telling me to go out for a run. And this was before, there have been some improvements in Beit Hanina a bit since I lived there, but you could go to the left from where I was living into the Palestinian community, and there was no garbage pickup. There was garbage in the canisters, and the garbage was burning, and so you had these smoke smells and this pollution. You had, it didn't feel very safe. There were a lot of people on the streets. It felt this way. There were no, just the way you described, you know, there were no sidewalks, but that's why it didn't feel very safe. And then you would go into Pisgat Ze'ev, which is just right across the street, almost literally. And the sidewalks are as wide as the road in Beit Hanina. And there's playgrounds, and it's just a beautiful community that's clean, and, you know, there's garbage and things like this. And it's kind of an example or a snapshot of what I hear you saying. But the question I have for you, many Americans and international travelers, millions go to Jerusalem and the Holy Land every year, to Israel. Some go into the West Bank, but not as many. But millions go, and they would say it's because, you know, it's the difference between the inner city versus a nice part of the city. They would put the burden of the community on the Palestinian Jerusalemites and say, well, look, they're just lazy, or they're not taking care of themselves, or, and I'm not trying to be offensive at all. So thank you for letting me ask this question. And my point is, it's very hard to understand if you don't know all the details, like the things that you're talking about, what it looks like, which I want you to talk to us about. It looks like the Palestinian community is not safe and is dangerous. And that puts into our heads, it's because Palestinian people are dangerous, right? And, you know, the other communities that are these Jewish settlements are clean and well kept. And so help us understand kind of that perception versus some of the things you're talking to us about.
Yeah, it's exactly about the neglection that the East Jerusalem neighborhoods, and especially the neighborhoods behind the barrier, are getting from the authorities, and the attention that they got from the other side, the Israeli neighborhood, they are getting from the authorities. They're very simple. Like you can think it in any other place. It's about, there's a lot of discrimination in East Jerusalem. People themselves, they cannot build sidewalks. They cannot, like, the max, you can do for trash for your house, you will go and put it on the side, like on the, I know how they called it, the
dumpster.
The dumpster. But if the authorities are not cleaning it, after 2, 3, 4 days, there will be a small mountain of trash, and after other days, there will be another, like, and then people, they don't have, like, they have to live there. So some youth, I'm not saying that this is not happening, but some youth, unfortunately, or even some of the municipality workers themselves, they are burning these trash. So it will be for them, okay, we are burning them instead of just collecting them. That will save us some work and some money. And the who's looking from side, you will think, okay, these Palestinians are burning their trash. These Palestinians don't take care of themselves. But if you go to the details, it's not the responsibility of the people themselves to collect the trash. The only way if the municipality or the authorities are not helping them, as they do, they don't help. So the end of the story will be that, you know, after years and years and years of neglection, even this is even the Israeli authorities are admitting that the difference between East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem is about 25 years of investment. Like, you need to start investing for 25 years now in East Jerusalem to be equal, like to say what is happening now in West Jerusalem. So this is the situation. It's not covered. Even the authorities are saying that it without a problem. And yeah, but beside this, the situation in the neighborhoods behind the wall is much more worse than all of Jerusalem, because it's total neglection. It's a total neglection. And beside that, there's no security here. The police is not entering in these neighborhoods at all. They think they don't have any interest. The Israeli army entering only if they need to arrest somebody for security issues. Otherwise, nobody is entering. So this is like, it doesn't matter. Any other community without the police, without the security, will go to crimes, will go to because the lack of the responsibility from the authorities.
Yes. So part of your point is that if Israel is saying the Jerusalem municipality is a part of Israel and they've annexed the land, it's their responsibility to then take care of the people who live there.
Right?
Yes.
It's that simple. If you are taking, again, it's away from the political question. I'm speaking about the conditions of life. Yes. Until we will have a final solution, until there will be a political solution for East Jerusalem, until there will be a peace agreement, until then, that people of East Jerusalem should live in dignity, should have good life conditions, because they are paying everything. Like, they are paying all the taxes. They are paying all the what they need to do. Like, okay, like you cannot say that, well, these people are not just, they don't care. No, they do care. They're interested to have a good life, but again and again, they got a lot of neglection from the authorities. I will give you some samples. For example, for the 340,000 East Jerusalem residents, there's only one office for the Ministry of Interior. Like if you want to have an ID, if you want to have a birth certification, a death certification, or any other kind of documents that you can get only from the Ministry of Interior in Israel, when you have only one office, which is have only 8 employees working there, and in most of the cases the 8 are, half of them are not there or something, you can imagine that entering this office and waiting will take you days, if not weeks sometimes, to get the service. So here's nothing for the Palestinian to do what they can do. It's the same for other authorities, that they have only one office for the whole of East Jerusalem, which is more than a third of the people of Jerusalem. While in West Jerusalem, in every 2 or 3 neighborhoods, you will have an office for services. You will have different places that to go and to show that the authorities are caring.
So I think we have time for just 1 or 2 questions. Our time's been going so quickly, and thank you. This is so very helpful. As you're talking about these East Jerusalem communities that are on the West Bank side of the barrier, Kufrata, Kalandia, Lazaria, one of the
Al-Azariya is not part. We are speaking about 2 main neighborhoods, Kufr Aqab and Shafat refugee camp.
Shafat,
Yeah, Shafat refugee camp, because there's other Shafat who's very close to Beit Hanina. Just not to
Shafat refugee camp. Okay, no, that's helpful. What area are those? Areas A, B, or C? You said that there's no police because the Palestinian police won't go in, and you said there's very little, Israeli security will only go in if there is arresting someone. What area is that in terms of area A, B, or C?
According to the Israeli law, they are part of Israel and they are part of Jerusalem. They are not A or B or C. They are not part of the West Bank. They are part of Jerusalem and part of Israel according to Israeli law.
Okay, so that's very helpful. And are there any communities in the Bethlehem area, like Walaja or any of those, that would fall into that same category?
Walaja is a little bit different because Walaja is part of the West Bank, but it was included by, like, what happened in Walaja is opposite to what happened in Kufr Aqab.
Okay.
Kufr Aqab is part of Jerusalem, but it was excluded by the wall. The wall leave it outside. What happened in Walaja is part of the West Bank, but it was included in the wall.
I see.
So they are West Bankers, Palestinians with a Palestinian ID, but they are living inside the wall, and this make a lot of problems for them, because then on daily basis they need to have a checkpoint to go through the checkpoint and to show their permits. In some cases, many soldiers are saying, okay, if it's a new soldier, will say, okay, I never recognize you. You are not the one. Go back. But where to go back? So Walaja have a different kind of problems. While they have a lot of problems as well, but it's a different than of Kufr Aqab.
In Kufrata. That's very, very helpful. And I think you mentioned earlier that you can send us a link to some maps or something where we can actually look at to see.
I will send you. Right. Yeah, I will send you maps. I'll send you also some documents from the authorities themselves to show you the differences between the budget differences, just to show that it's not that we are claiming this. No, it's an official numbers that was published on the internet, and we got it through the Israeli court system by the authorities themselves.
Okay, well, and that brings me to my last question before we close. If people watching this in the US want to learn more, what do you think is most important for those who are engaged in peace building and advocacy about this issue? What's most important for them to know, and where can they go for more information or for resources?
I think they should understand that the claim of one Jerusalem is not existing on the ground. There's nothing such a one Jerusalem, unified Jerusalem. There's 2 Jerusalems. There's East Jerusalem, where people of Palestine, the Palestinian people living there with a lot of neglection and with a lot of poverty and a lot of discrimination. And there's the west of Jerusalem, which is different world totally. So they should understand that when we are speaking about Jerusalem, there's no one Jerusalem. There's much more than one Jerusalem. There's two Jerusalems and maybe three Jerusalems. If you will divide, even you will see that the neighborhoods behind the barrier as also Jerusalem. So it will be the neighborhoods behind the barrier, East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem from one side. So they should just keep in mind that there's nothing like a one unified Jerusalem. It's not existing. It's not there. And all what they hear that about that Palestinians are dangerous or they don't care for themselves, it came only from that the authorities are neglecting the needs of the people. The authorities, again, are not recognizing the people's needs, and they don't give them the right response. So the people in many cases, they don't have nothing, they have nothing to do. This is the where to go for research. Unfortunately, like, they can't go to the media. This is the only place. We have some Facebook pages, but it's mainly in Arabic, to be honest, to give some information for the people. Like we established 3 years ago, we established a small legal clinic in these neighborhoods to give a very, very tiny legal aid for the people, to help them even to fill some forms or to give them legal advices, what to do, where they should go, to save them some money and to save them from the going to Jerusalem, because travel to Jerusalem from these neighborhoods is a story itself. For a mother who she need to leave her house, it will be a whole day. What she will do, she will not go, because otherwise she will keep her children there. So it's a big story there. So this is what we are trying to do. But always, I will be very happy to share with you any articles or any media interviews that we do, just to put a light on what's happening in East Jerusalem.
Yes. Well, and I think one of the things we're working so hard to address is those millions of tourists every year who go to Jerusalem, and then it's possible to just go to the holy sites. Some of my friends call it the Disneyland tour of Israel, right? You know, and it's possible to not see the things that you're talking about. And so part of it is being able to have eyes to see, to be able to meet some of the people on the ground, to be able to hear their stories and understand what their life is like. And so I think that's an invitation for anyone watching, is to enter into the process of learning about some of the things we've been discussing today. I think that's one of the ways.
Yeah, it's unfortunately for many tourists, they never thought, like they go through from their hotel to the holy places. In the buses, they never see the Palestinian neighborhoods. They saw them from away, but they never tried to go there and to understand what's really happening there.
Yes, I think that's right. Well, any final words before we close?
Again, I would like to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit about what Palestinians in Jerusalem are facing. And this is we have a proverb in Arabic that said, it's like you have it also in English, that one picture is better than a thousand of words. But also living the condition, these conditions are much more worse than I could imagine. Again, like, I can tell you that one story for many, it's not one family, it's hundreds of families that they need to go, just to understand that they need to go very early, to wake up very early, just because of the checkpoint, just because they are living behind this checkpoint. By chance they had to live there because of that Israel pushed them to live there, because they are not allowing them to build inside Jerusalem. And after, so they are facing to see how much this will, like, everybody just to think about his children and his sons and daughters, that what will happen to them if they need to live this kind of life.
Yes. Well, and I do think it's so important. As we mentioned, this conversation is a part of our Lenten series focusing on Jerusalem, and we're calling our followers and constituents to pray for the city of Jerusalem. But as we pray, we also want to work toward justice. And so we want to address humanitarian concerns and human rights concerns. And so thank you for bringing some of those to reality today. It's really important for us to understand and to see and to understand ways our government is contributing and supporting some of these broken systems and some of this injustice. particularly as it's the perpetuation of the occupation in East Jerusalem and the West Bank and in Gaza. So thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate your work, appreciate your advocacy. We're really grateful.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.